Good afternoon, and thank you for attending another episode of the ClinEdge webinar series. My name is Simone, and I'll be your moderator today. For those of you who are new to our webinar series, ClinEdge hosts webinars each month partnering with experts in the industry. We strive to cover various topics on clinical research, including but not limited to operations and optimization, patient recruitment and retention, financial services, technology, and more. We invite and encourage experts from all realms of the healthcare industry to present in our webinar series to help promote learning, idea exchange, and progress. Our mission is to spread inspiration for clinical professionals by clinical professionals. We really would like to hear from you and would like to include your voice in the conversation. So ask questions, share comments, even challenge your ideas. Use the question and answer panel on the right side of your GoToWebinar sidebar to share at any time during the webinar. We will also have a few poll questions. Those will pop up right on your screen, but more about those later. Today's presentation is called, What Should I Expect from My CTMS and How Can I Further Leverage My CTMS to Streamline My Site? And I'd like to introduce today's presenter, Rick Greenfield, CEO of RealTime Software Solutions. With a background in information systems and clinical research spanning over 14 years, Rick enjoys working to build and implement software for the clinical research industry. Rick invented RealTime CTMS to solve many of the daily challenges that clinical research sites face, and his team is working on many innovative software solutions that will continue to create efficiencies for sites and the entities that interface with them. There is an exciting future ahead for clinical research industry as technology will soon accelerate the evolution of methods that streamline data processing and communication between sites, CROs, sponsors, IRBs, and other important vendors. So once again, if you have any questions during the presentation, please submit your questions at any time in the box on the right side panel of your screen. There will be about 10 to 15 minutes at the end for a question and answer session. I'll be asking questions out loud at that time. Any questions not addressed may be answered in a follow-up blog post or answered directly by email. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Rick to begin.
Great. Well, thank you, Simone. Thank you to ClinEdge for having me do this webinar today. And thank you to all of you who have joined. And as you know, I'm the CEO of RealTime Software Solutions. We have the RealTime CTMS product for sites. And I'm very passionate, of course, about CTMS, having been a prior site owner. And so this is a topic I very much enjoy talking about. I can probably talk about it ad nauseum. But I thought, and of course I was invited by ClinEdge to really discuss this topic because I think it's something that, while I know a lot of sites do and site owners do have these discussions at seminars and conferences and whatnot, I thought perhaps I could give at least some of my insights as I work with sites literally every day around the country, around the world that are utilizing CTMS and how, at least what I see as being some really important pieces of information to share with all of you. So thank you again, Simone. And I know we're going to start with some polling questions to get things started. So I'll turn it back over to Simone so she can start those questions.
Great, thank you. So the first poll we have is how many people are using a CTMS? I know Rick will explain a little bit more about why he's asking, but if you are logged in, you should be able to see the poll up on your screen, and if you just select your answer, it should automatically accept your answer.
Right, I mean, obviously pretty simple, just kind of getting an idea of how many of you are utilizing a CTMS currently, and maybe you're on here today because you just want to know a little bit more about how to use your CTMS to its fullest or what some of the features of your CTMS might be. And then, of course, maybe there's others of you that are not using a CTMS and are considering adding a CTMS to your site. And so you're trying to get more information and background on how that's going to, how to make the right choice on which CTMS to bring into your site.
Okay, great. I'm going to close this first one. You should be able to see the result on your screen. Rick, if you can't, the answer for people who are using a CTMS is 66% of attendees today, and for the people who are not, it's 34%.
Wow. And I'm actually surprised that the number of non-CTMS users is quite as high as it is, but that's great news.
Okay, and so, I believe we have a second one to follow up. The second one is, do you feel you have used your CTMS to its fullest? And that's for those of you who are using one. If you are not, you can just select, I do not currently use a CTMS.
Well, and I don't think there's a lot of additional information I can provide to this, but you're either using a CTMS, you're either not using a CTMS or you are, and either you love your CTMS or maybe you feel like you're not fully implementing that CTMS. So I just kind of want to get an idea of the folks that are on here, where they stand in this in these particular categories.
Okay, perfect. It looks like voting is starting to slow down, so I'll close the poll in about 5 seconds. All right, closing. And for the results, Rick, can you see the results on your screen?
I can barely see the numbers, though.
Okay. So for people who feel like they are using it to the fullest, we have 16% yes, 50% no, 34% not using a CTMS currently.
Okay. Well, that's really eye-opening for sure, and I'm glad we put these questions on here. All right. Well, then I guess I'll take it from here. And so, Simone, just to make sure, I need to switch it over to my screen now.
Yes.
Can you see that? Just want to verify.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Very good. Well, let's get started. So thank you again for answering the questions. That does give me a great bit of foundational knowledge here as to why everybody's here today. And I think it actually exemplifies why I wanted to do this presentation, because the majority of sites out there do have a CTMS, but I do find that there is also actually a majority of those sites that are definitely not fully leveraging their CTMS. And sadly, I have to say that's even true of my own product. I talk to my clients every day, and I see areas of the system that they could definitely be leveraging to a much greater degree. So what this basically leads to is not really knowing all of the different features and aspects that your CTMS can bring to your sites. It leads to poor CTMS selection. So for those of you that are looking to add a CTMS, hopefully this webinar is going to be great for you, because it'll show you the possibilities of what CTMS systems have to offer. Of course, the next one being that you have a CTMS, but you really haven't implemented it, and it takes time, it takes management effort to get it implemented. And then the last thing that I see day in and day out is just overall poor utilization. So, and that typically comes to just really not understanding or knowing about the various features and how to implement them. So I know we have one more polling question. This will be the last polling question related to this webinar specifically, and it's based on the utilization. So Simone, you want to do that real quick?
Yep, should be up. So the question is, for those of you who do not use your CTMS to its fullest, what is the reason? So the answer is we have up right now our lack of awareness of its features, lack of understanding how to use its features. For those of you who do not use the CTMS, we wanted to include that as well, just as an option for you. And then we have the last one, platform is not easy to use. Okay, so we'll just leave it up for 10 more seconds. So Rick, if you have anything to add about this question, you can elaborate a little more.
I guess I really don't. Once the results come in, I'll probably have a lot to say.
Okay, perfect. So we'll leave it open for a few more seconds. It looks like voting is starting to come to a halt. All right. So the results come out. Lack of awareness is 20%. Lack of understanding of how to use its features, 40%. Those 37 still not using CTMS from those previous answers, and 3% platforms not easy to use.
Okay. Well, very good. So it's a lack of awareness primarily for those of you that have a CTMS, and so great. Well, that gives again some great foundational knowledge here. So I will move on with the presentation, and just to make sure that you can see, I'm on CTMS truth number 2 slide, correct?
Yep, that's what we see.
Okay. And so this is the truth that I see all the time, is that sites are not utilizing the features of their CTMS. And you guys just answered it. It's a lack of awareness, a lack of really an understanding about the features and how they can benefit your business. The features are not easy to use or easy to implement. I actually am a little surprised that that polling question came in so low at 3%, because that is one that I do hear quite a bit, is that it's just, you know, the CTMS that we have, the features are not easy to utilize. They don't actually provide efficiency, which is, I think, what you would all want to get out of your CTMS at the end of the day. And so that is one that I do hear a little bit more often than what the poll showed. So, you know, I thought I would really just kind of start by going through what are, I think, what you should be looking for as primary functions in your CTMS. And even just to kind of preface this, you know, I think we use this word CTMS, Clinical Trial Management System, and what is the expectation? What are you wanting to do with this system? You know, my background is in information systems, and so an information system is what runs your business. It's the backbone of how you collect data, utilize that data to manage your business. Hopefully it brings efficient processes into your business, and so those processes can be, you know, all the way from, in our business of clinical research sites, all the way from, you know, bringing up a study in business development to recruitment activities, managing your patients for your coordinators, scheduling, all of these different things that lead to then back-end financials, so on and so forth. And so I think a lot of people think that CTMS is primarily just so you can track your financials and get off the spreadsheets, but they can do so much more. And so I'm really excited to kind of just go through this bullet point list. And this would be something that you could obviously download after the presentation. Just have this so you can, when you're vetting CTMS systems, you can really see if they have all these features. But number one, provide a robust subject database capable of capturing demographics, medical history, social history, medication history, and more for each subject. And so another thing that you would want to be intuitive, easy to use. And so capturing medical history for patients does take time. And but having a way to input that data quickly, like if you have people on the phone and they have a headset on, that they can be doing data entry and entering this information in a very quick and easy way, can be extremely valuable to your database building processes. So then once you have built your database, or as you continue to build your database, being able to leverage that database and search that database to find qualified subjects for future enrolling studies. And obviously, if you don't do step one, you're not going to be able to get to step two. Having names and phone numbers and email addresses is really not enough for you to be successful at leveraging that database. Having medical histories is what really counts. And just to give you a quick example, at the site that I used to be part owner of, we had over 100,000 people in our research database. And so, and about 85% of those had full medical history. So if you can imagine, when we had a new diabetes study start up, we could go into that database and do a criterion search, and sometimes have thousands of results, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 results of people that likely met the criteria based on age and BMI and medications and diagnoses and all that stuff. And then from there, there's several options on how to reach out to those folks. And this is what kept us being a top enrolling site, study after study. So the next bullet point here, assist with numerous recruitment functions to help enroll studies and build your CTMS database. A little bit redundant to just everything I was just saying. A lead management system for lead follow-up, lead tracking, staff progress notes, staff workload reporting, and campaign tracking. All of this very specific to that recruiting process, but if you have hundreds and sometimes even thousands of leads coming in from all the various advertising that you're doing, how are you going to manage that workload? I remember as doing several studies and doing advertising for several studies. We started out, you know, with sticky notes and steno pads, trying to keep up with patients we needed to follow up with, and we very quickly realized we needed something that was electronic that could really help us track all of these leads. And my mantra was make sure that no patient got left behind in that process. And so make sure that the CTMS system that you're looking at has a really robust lead management system. Study enrollment tracking. So after you get them past the recruitment stage and the subject hopefully comes into the study, signs an informed consent, now a whole new set of activities is going to happen. We need to track that patient's visits, target dates, scheduling. and really see all that on-study progress. This is, very much a coordinator activity. And then the scheduling, being able to set up appointment reminders, and I'll talk about it more, but having text messaging built into that as well. So then, going to the next slide here, study financial tracking. And this is something that you could do a whole webinar alone, just on these functions. But I tried to really carve it down to just a general idea of what the study tracking should include. But your studies have a couple of different types of revenues. You have study level revenues, which is going to be things that are not visit specific. Your startup, record storage, maybe reimbursements for investigator meetings, and other payments, dollars that are coming for advertising, so your budgets for advertising. So a way to really track all of those revenue items and receivables and make sure you're collecting all of those things. Then you have your visit level financials. So that's really when the rubber meets the road. When you're seeing a patient, what money is exchanging hands? You're earning money for seeing this patient, procedures are being done, and so being able to track the cost, the stipends, and everything that goes into that visit. So your revenue accumulations, being able to now invoice for those, look at your aging, and your receivables and all your payment tracking. And then on the other side, your study cost tracking, and really getting that down to provider or facility, and then tracking your payables and making sure that you're also getting money out the door to your payable entities on time. We've got to keep the doctors and the providers happy for the work that they're doing and track all of that. And at the end of the day, being able to see gross profits by really looking at your revenues and costs. And then another feature that I know not all systems have in there, but having a quality control system built into your financials. When you have a coordinator going into a visit and marking a visit as done, and procedures and costs and and assigning providers, it's very difficult to rely upon that data. Coordinators obviously are extremely skilled people, but they're not accountants. And so before we start billing sponsors and paying providers, having a QC function built into your system so that someone who is more trained on the accounting side of things can really review that visit completion or assessment and mark it as being quality QC'd or quality control completed, and then now all of those functions can happen. So some more features of your CTMS. Robust scheduling, so having a calendar and lots of different options with that calendar, having user calendars, doctor calendars, resource calendars, company calendars, group calendars. So if you have maybe different teams, maybe your regulatory team needs a regulatory calendar, your women's health department needs a women's health calendar. So lots of stuff to do there. And then Outlook synchronization, so that when you schedule something on your calendar in the CTMS, it pushes into your Outlook and adds the appointment to Outlook, which of course then adds it onto your phone if you have that synced up as well. And then having automated text messaging, so that whenever you're scheduling an appointment with a patient, they automatically get appointment reminders via text message to respond and confirm their appointments. Then we also would want to have ways to report that as well. So task tracking for individual users, so having a way for your users to be able to say, what am I supposed to be doing today? That always for the recruiters, being able to look at that lead management system and look at what patients need to be contacted or recontacted or followed up with. For coordinators to see what visits are coming up, what visits need to be scheduled, and other types of tasks that are specific to them. And then, of course, on the back end, for your managers to have the ability to track their deliverables as well. Front-end reporting, so that staff can look at various functions. Maybe they want to run a subject matching report and look for subjects for the study. Maybe they want to look at general recruitment metrics to see how they're doing with recruitment based on goals and how many people do we have scheduled for screen, how many, so we can get an idea for if we're on track to meet our enrollment targets. So having really robust and easy to use front-end reporting, and then back-end reporting, of course, for managers. We want to be able to look at recruitment metrics. I want to see what my study campaigns are producing as far as number of leads, and then what the results of those leads are. How many people are actually coming in for pre-screens and screens, and then randomizing into the study. Looking at staff production, being able to see CRC visit logs. How many visits is Sally doing? How many visits is Bill doing? last week, last month, and who's being more productive, and maybe who needs a little bit more coaching to try to make sure that they're meeting their production goals for us. Calendaring reports. How many visits do we have next week? How do I need to staff for this? Are we going to have enough coordinators available next week to meet the visit load that's coming in? So lots of forecasting, and then even financial forecasting based on the studies that we have in the system, based on the subjects that we have currently enrolled in upcoming visits that we have, plus even being able to forecast enrollments based on what you believe your enrollment rates are going to be. What are we looking at revenue-wise? How much are we going to make next month and for the next 3 months? And I believe in clinical research that is one of the hardest questions for any site to answer. So even with really good forecasting reports, it may not always come true. You can always get that phone call from the sponsor that says that we're closing the study today, right? But at least having some general idea of what the workload is looking like, and if your numbers are looking good for future months. So then, I wanted to spend a little bit more time talking about database building. And this is one of my soapbox speeches that I like to give to my sites, is this idea of building your database with potential subjects. And so if you have a patient referred in from a doctor, which is an extremely highly valuable patient, if you're doing advertising, whether that be some sort of online social media, Facebook advertising, or television or radio, you have people calling you or reaching out to you online and expressing an interest in your site and in your study. And I like to say those people are the 15%. And so I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Ken Getz and the Tough Center. They did a survey a few years ago that really just looked at the general population in the U.S., and they found that about 15% of the population is willing to participate in clinical research. So to me, that's such a valuable person when we are talking to someone on the phone who's expressed an interest in the study. We're talking that 15%. And my goal was to capture that 15% and build my database of the 15% for clinical research so that I can now engage them and stay engaged with them. And if they don't make it into the study they called into today, then I can reach out to them for future studies and maybe get them into a study 6 months from now. So use your CTMS to implement and monitor best practices. So recruitment campaign and advertising channel tracking, looking at what channels are actually bringing in that 15% and bringing patients to you. And I can compare what Facebook does for us for the spend on Facebook versus radio versus print. Web integration is something that you may strongly want to consider when you vet your CTMS. Does your CTMS connect with your website so that you can list your studies on your website and have mobile-friendly landing pages that can capture applications? So for those of you that may not have seen this before, having the ability to list your studies, but you're doing this from your CTMS, so literally you go into your CTMS, you can add the text information and the visual pictures or IRB-approved flyers, and with a click of a button, it adds that study to your website. Now you have a landing page that you can utilize for online marketing where you can provide a link on an online ad, and someone can click on that link and land on that landing page, and then if they apply for the study, it's a short form that they can fill out, and then that lead drops directly into the CTMS and alerts your staff that a new lead has just come in and goes straight into that lead tracking system for the study, and then also gives that specific campaign online or on the radio or billboard or whatever it is that brought that lead in, and now you're able to look at the ROI of those particular advertisements. But that web integration is a really valuable resource. And the recruiter alerts, as I was mentioning, so these are automated alerts that would come in when a lead comes in. It alerts the recruiting staff that there is a new lead that they need to follow up with. Having the lead tracking, the workload reporting, the medical history collection, and study script utilization, all of this stuff being very important to you building your robust database of that 15%. So I know I've already kind of touched on this, but I wanted to present a golden nugget. Actually comes from Christine Pierre back at Site Solutions Summit many years ago. She'd always put golden nuggets out there, so I'm using her term. But I believe the capture of medical history is one of the things that I consistently see sites not doing. I think personally one of the biggest reasons why is because a lot of the CTMS systems out there, it's not a really easy process. It takes a lot of time, so I think that's something you'd want to consider. But one of the most valuable things that you want to do at your site, I believe, is get these medical histories for these patients in there. So the example that I like to use is, let's just say I have, these are small numbers, but if I have an employee that I'm paying to basically make phone calls all day and talk to patients, let's say that person makes 20 calls and they leave 10 voicemail messages, but they actually talk to 10 people. And the chances are, out of those 10 conversations that they have with potential patients, maybe they get one potential screen. That would actually be a good result, to have a 10% positive result. A lot of times they're going to have 10 conversations, they're going to screen 10 patients, and they're going to get 0 screens out of it. But here's the bottom line. If they talk to 10 people and they spend that 15 or 20 minutes on the phone with them, to have them capture their medical history as part of the screening process and get that medical history put into your database, now we can get their email address and their mobile phone number and ask them if it's okay to send them text alerts about new studies. But you can send out a monthly email. Your CTMS hopefully has the email client integration so that it can connect up to an email client like MailChimp or Constant Contact, and you can have that automatically build your email database so you can send emails to your entire database of patients each month. It has all the studies that are enrolling. They can link to your landing pages on your website. I know I'm getting maybe a little bit too far in depth here with some of these practices, but these are some of the more advanced things that you can do to really remarket to your database. One, build your database. Two, remarket to your database to keep these people engaged with you. And then the text alerts we're finding, just to give you an example, 15% of people are responding to email campaigns. That's actually a high number. Sometimes it's less than 10%, but we're seeing upwards of 80% response rates with mass text messages and text alerts. So having the ability to send out mass texts to your database where I can say, here's 500 people that I just did a criterion search that matched the criteria for my study. I'm going to send these 500 people a text alert that says, hey, it looks like you might qualify for my diabetes study. There's a good chance you're going to get 300 to 400 text responses where people saying, yes, I'd love to know more. Those responses would come right back into your CTMS and alert your staff to give them a call. So just to kind of recap some of these recruitment features, the website integration, the email client integration, social media integration. So Facebook has APIs that can be connected to where leads can come straight from Facebook into your CTMS. The ad campaign and study budget management. So if I know that my sponsor is giving me $5,000, I want to make sure that I'm tracking the expenditures and what channels I'm spending those dollars on, with what vendors. I want to make sure I don't overspend or go over my budget, so we have the tools in the system for that. And then I also want to be able to look at that ROI and how many leads I get and if those leads actually turn into randomizations for my study. Staff recruitment, communication, and referral source coding. So being able to make sure that your staff is able to really work together in the system to know who's doing what, if a patient's already been called, where they're at in that referral process or that lead follow-up process. And so that's part of the lead management optimization for that call center level management. We want to make sure that this is an optimized system so that if I do have people on the phones and I'm paying them to be on the phones all day, that it's a very intuitive system for them to be able to do their job. The subject criterion searches, and then reports again to see the ad performance. And then what I haven't really mentioned is then staff performance. So if I do have people on the phones, I want to be able to run a report. How many people did you call today? What were the outcomes of those calls? How many people did you get a hold of? How many people did you just leave messages for? How many completed screens, partial screens? All of that leads to me being able to really determine if that person's being productive or not. If they're there for 8 hours in a day and they only make 40 calls, I would hope that that means that they had 20 to 30 completed phone screens and they just had a really good day of getting a hold of people, but otherwise 40 total calls would not be a very productive day. So my next golden nugget is company-wide adoption is key. And so if you're going to invest in a CTMS system, an information system for your site, we want something that really does help us with all of these processes to create efficiency and make us a better site, a more profitable site, help us leverage recruitment, help my coordinators manage their patient loads, help my back-end people who are doing all the financial management compile that data, do invoicing and payables in a very easy and intuitive way. And so, so many sites don't implement their CTMS company-wide. And so one of those reasons I have found can be just simply reluctant users. Maybe it's because the CTMS isn't intuitive, or maybe it is a management issue, and I do see this a lot, that the CTMS has the capabilities and it's a good CTMS, but you have users that don't want to transition from their paper processes to more efficient CTMS processes, and unfortunately the management is not willing to just say, hey, look, you got to do it. And honestly, implementation is something you learn about in school when you're getting in information systems, but that's the most challenging part, is getting over the hump. Because you are going to probably experience a short period of time where efficiency levels do go down. I think it's a very short period of time, but anytime you change your process from a paper process to an electronic process, or vice versa for that matter, you're probably going to have to relearn some processes, and you're going to be a little slower to start out. But what I find is that when the management really does take hold and get with the staff, one, try to really get buy-in as much as you can. But even if you don't get that buy-in, it's like, look, I'm not asking you, I'm telling you. We're implementing a CTMS system. This is what you have to move to, and this is what you have to use. A month later, they're wondering how they lived without it. But it is getting over that hump. And so work with each department to ensure that they are leveraging all of those features. And so that can be a stepwise process. A lot of times when we see the implementation of a CTMS, it starts with your back-end folks learning how to build the studies and the templates and the finances and all that stuff. And then you're probably going to start building your database, so you're going to need to work with your recruitment team and then your coordinators, but then really going back and circling back with each of those departments and then finding how you can implement more of the features within the system to add even further efficiency. So going back to that recruiting department, are you guys using all these features? Are you using the MailChimp or Constant Contact integration? Do you have the website integration going? Are you doing the campaign tracking and getting the ROI numbers for us? Are you using the lead management system like you're supposed to? And I could go into the same level of granularity for all these other departments to make sure they're doing the same thing. That can be your regulatory folks utilizing the e-regulatory systems. So in other words, everyone should be using a CTMS pretty much. Really, pretty much everybody. So if it's a good CTMS, it's going to handle the business development, recruitment, regulatory, CRC functions, the scheduling, the QA/QC, financial, invoicing, collections, provider payments, stipends, all your reconciliations. And so what are the 4 main reasons why sites don't get all the staff involved? Now, maybe it's because of pricing, and I've definitely seen this with some of the CTMS systems out there, being based on the number of users is how you pay. I'm completely agnostic today in this webinar, but I feel like that is not a good scenario for sites, because if I have 20 employees, I want all 20 employees to have a username and access into the system and be able to use it for their job functions. I don't want to be or feel limited to bring everybody into the CTMS because it's going to cost me more. So that's one thing to definitely look at. Or maybe the features just don't exist, and so obviously that would be a reason why you're not utilizing the CTMS in these different departments, because there really aren't features that would help them out. Or maybe the features are not easy to use and they don't provide the benefit that you were hoping they would. Or again, going back to that, it just simply isn't being implemented. The staff is not being trained and tasked with the system adoption. All right, so integration with other site systems. So, this is, I think, the next big thing for CTMS. I mean, I'm happy to say that the CTMS that I work with every day has had all this stuff for a while. I think it's the future for sure, but having the text messaging being integrated, maybe a no-brainer, of course. It ties in with the calendar, ties in with recruitment and the mass texting and all that. Stipend payment systems, paying and tracking all your subject stipends, having the reloadable cards and 1099 reporting, and having that being completely integrated into a single platform, so you're not having to log into different platforms to perform these functions. E-regulatory. Again, there's integrated solutions and non-integrated solutions. And imagine being able, you're in your CTMS, you're already on a study, click a button, and now you're in the regulatory binder, or log out, log into a different system to get into your regulatory binder. So really being able to integrate the regulatory into the mix, and that can also include all of your professional documentation, so CVs and licenses for all the staff and trainings, and being able to have all of that captured in the CTMS and putting expiration dates in there, and then having those professional documents then filter in automatically into the regulatory binders just by selecting those people as delegates on the study. And then the new thing, of course, eSource is a big thing that I think we're all shifting to. It's very exciting, but you're going to have standalone eSource systems out there and then fully integrated eSource systems. And if you have a coordinator that's already in the system working with patients and scheduling and all that stuff, how about we click a button and go straight into the source and start collecting data versus having to then log into another system. So the future of your site CTMS, I would make sure that these are things that the system either already has or that are coming up soon. So in summary, your CTMS should be intuitive and user-friendly. I think one of the most important factors. People can talk about bells and whistles all day long. Hey, our system can do this, our system can do that. That's great, but if your staff can't do it, it's worthless. So making sure that the system truly is a fit for your staff and that they are going to actually be able to adopt these things into their daily lives, and you're going to get the benefit of those features. Your CTMS needs to be widely implemented. We want to make sure that everybody's using it. When I used to walk down the halls of my site, I could look into anyone's office and boom, they're working in the CTMS. And that's not the case when I walk down the halls of a lot of other sites. And so the goal to really get everybody involved, have a collaborative system that we're all working in. And then completely utilizing it. So obviously redundant, I'm summarizing, but utilizing all those features. The integration with other systems so that we're not having to use all the different portals. And I think that any site is familiar with the idea of having to log into this system and that system and this system and that system, but not your CTMS. Let's just go into one system and it's all there in one system. A good support for real-time data entry and reporting. So having, it kind of goes back to the intuitiveness and the user-friendliness, but having a system that does make it easy to get real-time data put into the system. Having that link to your patient database. Having a patient database that's just sitting there is somewhat worthless. If we're not remarketing to these people and staying engaged with our database and pulling potential patients out of our database and utilizing medical histories to help us enroll our studies, and as every year you add more and more people into that database, maybe someday you have 100,000 people in your database, and that can easily turn your site into a top enrolling site. Helping something that really makes you a strong recruitment manager, and so not just talking about the database itself, but all those other features like the website integration and linking up to social media and things like that that really help to maximize your ability to build your database. And then, sites, we all struggle to be profitable. There's the heydays and then there's really tough days as a site. So we need a system that's also affordable and makes sense for what it provides. And that's basically, again, I wanted to keep it relatively short today and go through my summary of what I think you should be looking for. But I also wanted to open it up to any questions, specific questions that anyone might have as well.
Yeah, thank you, Rick, for your very informative presentation. We do have time for questions. Just as a reminder, you can submit your questions in the box on the right to be read out loud, and Rick will be able to answer. We did get some questions before the webinar, so I'll kind of mix those in with the questions we've gotten throughout. So I know that you reviewed integration with or financial tracking and other systems, but we have a few questions, Rick. What systems are best for financial management? And another one is integration with other systems, import capabilities, and system embedding prices.
Could you repeat the second half of that? I didn't quite understand you.
Yeah. Well, the question is just integration with other systems, import capabilities, and system embedding prices or pricing. Those are all the questions.
Yeah, I think the one thing I'm going to stray away from today, you all know that I'm the CEO of RealTime, and so I'm going to stray away from really promoting any systems out there or saying any names as far as this system or that system, just because I'm in a biased position. So I can't really offer anything with regards to what systems to use. And I think that the questions seem to be related a little bit more to financial. But there's a lot to consider when it comes to importing and exporting data. And that can also be talking to a very wide range of audiences. So you see sites out there that want to integrate with EMR systems. A lot of times that's the institutions and the oncology centers, some of the really big hospital systems that have integrations with EMR. But I'll address the question more on the side of the financial. And so, I think that you can sort of look at CTMS as being its own cosmos of accounting management for the studies, and that's for direct revenues and direct costs. Anything related to the clinical research studies. Now, chances are you're using another financial system, say QuickBooks, to manage all of your site finances and your true accounting. And what RealTime tracks is really all the minutia and a subset of very finite data related to the studies. There are systems out there that claim to connect up to QuickBooks and other financial systems. I literally 1% of the time see that actually in practice. And I personally don't think that it's necessary. You get a check-in from a sponsor, it's for $10,000. You go into QuickBooks and you say $10,000 and you apply it to the job. Now I'm going to go into RealTime and I'm going to apply that $10,000 to the visits and the procedures and everything that's very specific and how we're going to apply that $10,000. And of course that leads to payables, but at the end of the day I just write a check to a doctor in QuickBooks, but I do all the minutia tracking within RealTime. So, I don't know if that completely answers the question, but I don't, for finances, think that there is really a great need for any type of integration with, say, an accounting management system. But there are other integrations with other systems, maybe for patient data and things like that, that are a little bit, in my opinion, more beneficial in certain instances.
Okay, great. And just as we go through these questions, I'm just going to have ask you guys if you do want to be contacted or followed up by Rick, you can answer at this time. So another question that we had was, have you ever thought of using RealTime software as an enterprise resource planning software, integrating accounting like Intuit QuickBooks, financials, not just tracking revenues from sponsors / costs associated to studies, and other functional departments into one software?
Well, it certainly crossed my mind, and I think that clinical research presents a lot of challenges at the site level. You hear a lot about trying to track time tracking, output of particular staff, which I think can be so challenging because a coordinator might be taking a call from this sponsor and working on this study for 10 minutes, and then we'll walk into a room and see a patient for that study, and the doctors too are seeing this patient, that patient on this study and doing these procedures. And the ability to really track that down study by study for time tracking would be extremely difficult. And so that all leading to and so I guess I would just sort of summarize the answer saying that does fall a little bit outside of the scope of what RealTime does today. And I think really the idea of what CTMS does is really do that complete enterprise accounting tracking. So you no longer need QuickBooks, you just use RealTime. I think it'll be a long time before you see a CTMS system phase out a program such as QuickBooks, which obviously has so many robust features, payroll, and all kinds of other stuff. So again, I'm not 100% sure if that fully answers the question, but you can be rest assured that it is something that keeps me up at night, just knowing that I want to be able to find better ways to track all of these things, be able to really get to soft costs, not just direct costs and direct revenues, but really be able to look at those soft costs of time tracking and things like that, so I can get a better idea if I'm profitable on a particular study or not based on all those other overhead type expenses.
Okay, great. We have another one. Where is the line between using the CTMS as a repository of patient info and an actual EMR?
That's a great question, and I actually broach this a lot. There's a lot of sites initially, and this is my opinion, I'll be honest with you, so I know there are varying opinions out there, but a lot of sites will say, you know, we want to dump our EMR into our CTMS system, or we want to create this integration, which an integration, again, can be beneficial, I think, on a one-by-one basis. I want to grab this patient's information, I want to grab that patient's information, but I think that your EMR and your research database have two very different functions, and so utilize the EMR for your medical side of your practice and everything that EMR does, and utilize your research database as that subset, that 15% of patients that actually even have an interest in participating in clinical research. And I really do try to discourage sites that initially think, well, we want to dump our EMR into our CTMS database. About 85% of those people have no interest in participating in clinical research. So I want to build a little gold mine, a little 15% database, my research database, that I'm going to leverage for remarketing and recruitment and all that stuff. And that's where I'm going to put all those applicants that come in from the various resources, whether it be doctor referrals or EMR referrals or website referrals. So I think they have two very different functions, and I see a lot of benefits to keeping them very separate. In only very few instances do I think trying to really migrate those two databases has a lot of benefit.
Okay, great. Question. How is your CTMS data stored? Would it be on my own server? Is it hosted by RealTime? What about backups?
Another great
answer
question.
that, but maybe you can just elaborate.
No, I really didn't touch on it. You know, I like to tell people that SaaS-based software, of course, it does matter where it's hosted and how it's hosted, and are the backup systems robust. But I can certainly tell you, in our case, we are hosted at a level 3 data center that specializes in HIPAA-protected hosting. And so just that alone, when data is being written to one of our servers, it's being written about 5 times instantaneously. And then every night we're backing up to multiple geographical locations around the country. And so I like to tell people there is no safer place for you to put your data than on our servers. And, you know, we do sometimes get people that say, well, I want to have the CTMS on my servers. And I don't care who you are, what institution you are, and how good your IT department is. I can assure you they don't have the same level of security and backups that we do at RealTime. And so you would actually be making a choice to have your data a lot less safe keeping it on site. And you don't have to take my word for it. You know, when we bring on customers, especially ones that are more so concerned, we can provide all the documentation about our systems and how incredibly safe your data actually is, and the backups. And, you know, there are times whenever we've had clients that, you know, accidentally deleted something today and they're wanting to get that data back. Well, then we can go back to last night's backup and we can restore that data for you, no problem. So, yeah, I mean, unless there's another question, you know, kind of related to the hosting, you know, my answer is yes, it is hosted by us. It is SaaS-based software, and your data is incredibly safe.
Perfect. All right, this one says, what is this thing that people are talking about, automatic EDC integration? Also, does RealTime have some kind of ability to do research notes?
Research notes?
Yep.
Okay. I believe that the eSource revolution is going to be really 2 phases. One, we're going to see the adoption of eSource at the site level in a very big way, where basically we're going to be moving towards getting rid of paper. We're going to be collecting data. Storage fees are going away. Doctors are going to be signing documents with their thumbprints and iPads. It's going to be very efficient and very awesome. But the one thing that we're not going to be able to remove right away is the transcription process into EDC. Now, there will be some of that happening now, and in the near future, you'll see it growing. Medidata, for example, has an API that you can connect up to and push your data into EDC. And I think that's going to be a very small subset of studies at this point in time. I think less than 10% for sure. But I think just in the next couple of years, that percentage is going to grow to where more and more of your studies are going to be pushable into EDC systems. So essentially, when you're collecting a data point in real time, it's being written to your eSource database, and it's also being written to the EDC database. But it's, my personal belief is that it is going to take a little while for that Phase B process to really become ubiquitous in our industry. But I will also say that I think that the data collection eSource tools that are going to come onto the market, Phase A, where we still have the transcription process, are still going to be worth their weight in gold, and the efficiencies that they provide both to the sites and to the sponsors. We're talking remote monitoring, all kinds of very cool things, and then the fact that it also integrates with your site master file for regulatory and all of your other processes at your site, and everything's happening in a single system, and we have mobile apps. It's going to be pretty awesome. But the notes, I'm not 100% sure specifically what you're referring to, but if you're talking about notes in source, the answer is yes. I mean, the ability to basically, anywhere within a source document, add notes and whatnot. Our particular system will have, a monitoring portal where a monitor can basically kind of like put like a sticky note. We don't call it a sticky note, but on any given page can query and put a question on a particular part of a source document, which will then alert the staff to the fact that there's a query which they can respond to and get resolved. And so all of that kind of documentation, just like you would experience on paper, is also going to be capable within eSource.
Okay, great. Actually, there was a follow-up to that question, talking about making a documentation like EMR. Those must have been the research notes that he was referring to.
Well, I am not as familiar with EMR, to be honest with you, so I probably can't really fully answer the question, but if we're talking about eSource, definitely the ability to add notes. If we're talking about CTMS and visits within CTMS, all of the visits have comment fields where you can add comments. They also have places where you can upload documents. So if you do progress noting or anything like that, you can upload those into the visit as visit notes. We have areas where you can upload documents for patient notes and add comments to those and electronic signatures. So, that might be a question that we could take offline, and maybe I could further understand and provide a better answer to.
Yeah, perfect. He also mentioned or making notes of, say, a telephone call with subject, but
Well, yes, I can answer that for sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I can answer that for sure. Absolutely. Every single call that you have with a patient, you should always have a progress note added into the system. If we're talking about real-time, the answer is yes. It's a very simple portal where when you pull up the patient's record, you have a place for your progress note. When you put that note in, it also captures the date and the time, the user. We have full audit trail, so you're able to see who captured that note and when it happens.
Okay, great. We have another one, follow-up question, since we are in Canada. Do you have a Canadian data storage host?
We do not have servers located in Canada, but we do have lots of Canadian customers. I think there's only one province of Canada that becomes more of an issue with, so maybe that's where you're located. I'd be willing to talk with you as well offline about a potential solution. But most of our Canadian customers have been able to work it out to where they can host right here in the U.S.
Okay, perfect. Will RealTime support CRO functions or site-only functions?
Well, we are doing our global pay, which is our stipend payment systems that can be in U.S. and OUS for travel reimbursements or stipends. That can be reloadable cards in the U.S. and direct deposit outside of the U.S. We do have the monitoring portals for the eDocs for the site, so the monitors can go in and review the entire regulatory binder and monitor everything. Same thing for eSource. They'll be able to completely remotely monitor and do all their source data verification. That is the extent of it right now. We do have aspirations, and we will be building out more CRO-based CTMS-like solutions in the future. Probably mid to late 2018 is when that's slated to really get off the ground. But right now, I would say just in general, RealTime is more site-focused and is more focused on bringing solutions to the market that help sites be more efficient and track all of the things that are necessary at the site level.
Okay, perfect. I believe we have time for maybe 2 more questions. I know I'm getting a lot process-based, but I'll just forward directly to Rick for him to answer, and he will be in touch. But for now, there's a question that says, any ability to customize to track NCORP credits? I'm not entirely sure what that means, but maybe you do.
I'm probably supposed to know, but I actually don't know exactly what we're referring to there. So I'll have to write that one down, and I'll definitely get back to you on that.
Okay. And this one is probably a similar answer to Canada question, but says, are you planning to have cloud storage in Australia? And if not, do you have a standalone product we can load onto our shared drive?
No, we are. Our product is completely SaaS-based. We have lots of New Zealand customers, lots of Australian customers. I have worked, and believe me, spent a lot of money with Australian attorneys. We have, I believe, all of the documentation necessary that should make it just fine for you to utilize our product and have your data hosted on our servers, which are in the U.S. And that's another thing that I'd be happy to go into more detail. But we have Australian customers, lots of them. They are hosting their data with us right here in the U.S., and we've done all the legal stuff, both with the Australian attorneys and U.S. attorneys, and we've been able to find a confidence level that we are within all the regulations.
Okay, perfect. Seems like a lot of the other ones are regarding price, so I'm not sure if you want to go over that now or just maybe email directly to the people who are asking questions about how much something like this would cost, roughly. So I'll leave that up to you. But
well, pricing is, sorry to interrupt you, Simone, but pricing is complicated if we're just talking about CTMS. And probably one of the things I should have put in this presentation, quite honestly, that I'm just thinking of is the fact that we're really one of the only companies that has some very robust enterprise-level systems where you can have multiple sites, SMOs, all connected into a centralized portal where you can launch into all the different CTMSs for your sites. We have multi-site systems, which is like really one CTMS that can house multiple site locations and separate your database or integrate it. So just lots and lots of different solutions for the different types of sites out there. Our basic single site CTMS pricing is on our website at realtime-ctms.com. And so that'll give you an idea of what the monthly fees would be. I think incredibly inexpensive, quite honestly. You know, if you're talking about being a middle price site, spending about $500 a month for your CTMS system, you know, what is that, 1 visit, 2 visits a month to help pay for your CTMS? I guarantee you a CTMS system will help you do a lot more than an extra 2 visits a month. So I think that it's so worth its weight in gold, and it's so cheap. But if you really want to know about some of the more advanced multi-site enterprise pricing, that would be a whole other conversation. And then, you know, with the add-on products such as the e-regulatory eDocs, eSource, our text solutions, pay solutions, which can all be integrated into one platform, and no one else can do that, by the way, we would have to provide you with the pricing for those various models and how to put that all together.
Okay, great. Well, we really do appreciate everyone who attends these webinars. I do have just another question up on the screen. So if there is any of these topics that you would like more information on, now's the time to just check them off. But that is all the time that we have for today's webinar. Please look for our follow-up email that will alert you of the on-demand status of today's event so that you can review any materials you missed or simply go over them again. I know we get a lot of questions on the slides and the recording, so if for any chance or any reason you don't get the recording in 24 hours, you can email us at webinars@clin-edge.com, and we will go ahead and forward it over to you. Any other questions you have directed at Rick? We don't have his email up on the screen. I think we missed that, but you can email any questions at webinars@clin-edge.com, and I'll forward them over to Rick as well. So on behalf of ClinEdge and RealTime, we thank you for joining us and taking the time to view our presentation. Have a great day.
Thank you all for your time. Have a great day.